Thank you for joining us for our next panel titled Resources of the Future, Innovation and Clean Growth. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please use the Whova Q&A, generously sponsored by Jambo. Before we begin, we have a short message from this session's sponsor, Geoscience BC.
Geoscience BC's collaborative minerals, energy, and water earth science research projects bring together industry, government, academia, Indigenous groups, and communities. Geoscience BC is an independent, not-for-profit society powered by more than 50 volunteers. It is part of an agile, made-in-BC coordinated approach to public earth science. Geoscience BC research supports jobs and attracts investment. Every dollar of minerals research results in more than $6 of mineral exploration investment. Stimulates innovation that makes BC more competitive. New techniques and methods that can be used in BC and exported. Minimizes emissions and environmental impacts. Open data about induced seismicity, emissions, and water. Encourages development of new cleaner energy sources. Understanding clean geothermal energy potential. Develops new relationships with Indigenous groups. Building partnerships and understanding. Increases knowledge and technical capacity. 124 geoscience scholarships have been funded since 2007. Working together, we can attract investment, inform sound decisions, and catalyze a cleaner, lower carbon future for all British Columbians.
Thank you, Geoscience BC, for your support of the 2021 Forum. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce this morning's session moderator, Gavin Durham, President and CEO at Geoscience BC.
Oh, thank you for the introduction, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to moderate Panel 8, Resources of the Future, Innovation and Cleaner Growth. Now, I recognize this panel follows the keynote from the leader of our province, Premier Horgan. So I wish to recognize and thank Premier Horgan for his leadership getting all of us through this pandemic. I do hope everyone is staying safe as best you can during these unprecedented times, and I wish to thank all of our leaders and frontline workers for their steady and positive approach. It really gives us all hope and some optimism for a better future. So my name is Gavin Durham. I'm the President and CEO of Geoscience BC, and I'm speaking to you from Vancouver, the traditional lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Over the last 15 years, Geoscience BC has completed 197 projects on minerals, energy, and water resources in every region of British Columbia. Currently, we have 39 projects underway or planned in the province, and we are pleased to be a sponsor of the 18th Annual BC Natural Resources Forum. So this panel is about BC's critical resource sector and how it's a driving force behind innovation, research, and technology used to advance environmental stewardship and create new economic opportunities throughout the province and beyond. Before I introduce the panelists, I wish to invite the audience to use the Whova Q&A function to enter your questions. So I will now begin the discussion by welcoming and introducing our four panelists. They're all very well known and they have fantastic bios which are on the website, so I won't go into great detail, but let's start. First off, we have Sue Paish, the Chief Executive Officer of the Digital Technology Supercluster. Welcome, Sue. Second, we have Pilar Portela, the President and CEO of Astra Earth. Welcome to Pilar. John Adams, the Managing Director of Natural Gas Innovation Fund. Welcome, John. And Martin Turenne, President and CEO of FPX Nickel Corp. Now let's turn to our panelists to hear their opening remarks on how their companies or organizations are being innovative or using technology to support cleaner growth in British Columbia. So we'll start with Sue from the Digital Technology Supercluster, where I understand there's a strong focus on improving competitiveness. So over to you, Sue.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Thanks to Geoscience BC for sponsoring this, and thanks for allowing me to be on this very esteemed and scary panel. Scary because we're in a very, very interesting time when it comes to innovation, especially in our natural resources sector, and scary because the rest of you are so impressive. It's an honor to be with all of you. I've got a few comments to make to get the conversation started, and I am going to start with COVID. COVID does affect everything that we are doing and what we will be doing in the future. We hear sometimes people saying we're going to go back to the way we were in January of 2020 or July of 2019. But we're not going back to the way things were. I remember it was about a year ago, we were all in Prince George for this conference, navigating our way through mountains of snow and ice and having a really spirited conversation about the future of our natural resources sector. And I think if there's one thing COVID has presented to us in the opportunities category, and there are some, is to really focus on how we can leverage technologies to advance key industries in Canada and make them more globally competitive. We're going to talk, I know, Gavin, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but the natural resources sector is right in the strike zone of where there's an opportunity coming out of COVID or accelerated because of COVID. In terms of innovation and what does it mean generally for Canada, for British Columbia, and for our economy writ large, I'm sure many people watching this presentation have read the Industry Strategy Council report that came out a few months ago. If you haven't, I commend it to you. It makes lots of practical recommendations, but one of the key recommendations is that it identifies industrial strategy for Canada that's focused on 4 pillars. And the first pillar they reference is that Canada must become a digital and data-driven economy. There is no doubt now that the world is digital, and we're not going back. We're going forward. And those economies, those sectors, those companies, and those industries that take advantage of this opportunity to accelerate through digital transformation will be the ones that win domestically and will position themselves to win globally. We've also seen a blending of economy, health and safety of Canadians, and environmental stewardship in attacking climate change. And of course, we saw again a couple of months ago the Honourable Jonathan Wilkinson, our Minister of Environment and Climate Change, really putting a mark on Canada for leadership with his climate action plan. And that also goes hand in hand with our economy. The climate plan that includes things like reducing emissions, advancing ideas for clean growth, low carbon future, these things that perhaps even a year ago we thought were on the horizon are here and now, right now. And we see in our provincial government, the new mandate letters for our ministers all refer to digital. They refer to digital transformation. They refer to innovation in an active and present way, not as something that is over on the outside of the economy, but something that we are all doing right now. The world is now digital. Digital is not a subset of the economy anymore. It is the foundation for our economy. And we've seen this over the last 12 months when we've seen, for example, 40% of Canada's workforce found ways to work remotely overnight almost. Millions of students finished last school year in digital classrooms. And looking ahead, we see that by 2022, more than 80% of enterprise IoT will incorporate artificial intelligence. These are advances that even a year ago seemed to be in the distant future. So let me take it from that level and bring it down to what's the supercluster? Who are we? What do we do? And why does it matter? We are here as a supercluster to bring together industry, academia, and non-for-profits to solve some of society's and industry's biggest problems. A lot of people think we're here to sell technology. We're not. We're here to solve society's and industry's biggest challenges. Things like making sure that Canadian companies are globally competitive. Things like preventing the decimation of communities and valuable resources by the impact of climate change, such as fires and floods, and developing tech and talent for tech-enabled jobs that are going to be throughout all of our sectors, including our natural resources sector. About an hour ago, we made a significant announcement of an investment of $8.7 million in the training digital training of talent across Canada in the 19 to 29-year-old category in digital and digital-enabled jobs. How do we do this? We do it through collaborative innovation and co-investment. That's a new model. What does it look like? It means we bring organizations who wouldn't normally sit together around a table to develop solutions to problems that were better than any solution a single company could come with on its own. Co-investment means that once the private sector has come around the solution to the problem, they put their money in first. Private sector invests, and we trail as stewards of public funds. We trail with public funds once a project team has developed outcomes as part of their business plan. So let me just close with just one example, and Gavin, I think you're probably familiar with this one. I could give you lots of examples, but I'll give you one example of a project and then some of the impacts that we've got coming already just two and a half years into our mandate. It's a project called Earth Data Store, which includes EarthCast, Microsoft, geosciencebc, University of Victoria. And what this project has done, and it's closed its first phase already, is taken Earth observation data from Earth observation satellites and created a platform that can allow for the analysis of this data so that we can identify communities and we can identify parts of our province or indeed parts of the world that are at highest risk for severe climate change induced extreme weather events. Think of floods, think of forest fires. Think if we didn't ever have Fort McMurray again on fire. And so this is one example of a project that will have significant impact on our natural resources community and our industries if we can identify those areas and protect them from these kind of climate events. Just in closing, some of the impacts that we've got already, we have 100 digital products and services in development or in deployment that wouldn't exist but for the work of the Supercluster and our members. Those projects that we've got active right now are forecasting over $1 billion in revenue for those companies just in the existing projects. And we're really focused on developing talent. And I've already mentioned the announcement that we made today. So I'm going to close there, Gavin. I've got lots more thoughts I could share with you, but I'm going to turn the microphone back to you. The close is the world is digital. Our natural resources sector has an opportunity to capture the future if we can digitally transform elements of our sector. Thanks a lot, Gavin.
Thank you very much, Sue. Fantastic opening remarks, and it really sets the stage for a great discussion here today. So a very good segue to our next panelist, Pilar Portela from Astra Earth, where I know they placed utmost importance on the collecting data.
Gavin, my audio is not working. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Pilar.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thanks very much. I am as a project lead of Flow H2O, which is one of the Supercluster initiatives. I cannot really emphasize enough on the power of collaboration. Projects that tackle global challenges require a lot of effort and innovative ways in which consortia can actually address them. In the areas of water, and especially areas of water scarcity, sharing accurate, timely, and environmental and water data to satisfy all needs for people and nature is certainly one of the biggest challenges that the world is facing. To be able to do more with less and to efficiently allocate resources to the most productive uses, we require integrated, distributed, vast amounts of data. And I think as the world embraces the importance of this environmental sustainability, water management and climate change, organizations are placing greater emphasis addressing the crisis to minimize the impact to themselves and to the environment. To succeed, we definitely require the involvement and cooperation among all the diverse businesses, communities, and government stakeholders. I believe that through the development of data common platforms, among other things that include really all externalities that have an effect on the environment and water, we may be able to address local, regional, and global goals. One of the innovative approaches that we have developed is using a dynamic modeling system so that we can use real-time data and stream analytics. We are able to achieve this through smart sensors and know that we can pre-process events at the point of collection, process data anomalies right on the spot, and also install alarms and notifications of potentially dangerous environmental events. We need to be able to do this in a low-cost way because we need to be able to string massive amounts of data collection points around the world so that we can deal with water and climate change crises in real time and not years behind. And here is really where the idea of bouncing beyond and doing a lot more than what we were planning to do before the pandemic is going to be critical. So all of these joint efforts that we're doing here together with government and resource industries and organizations such as the Supercluster really pulls us through to be able to be more innovative in a way that usually we wouldn't be able to do on our own. Thanks, Gavin. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Pilar. Now let's turn to John Adams from the Natural Gas Innovation Fund. I know there's a focus on funding emerging clean technologies and innovations related to reducing emissions and realizing economic benefits at the same time. So over to you, John.
Super. Thank you, Gavin. Maybe I'll just ask Melissa to bring up some of the first slide that I've prepared for the day. Great. So thank you to the organizers of the BC Natural Resource Forum and to you, Gavin, from Geoscience BC for the invitation to speak on this panel, Resources of the Future, Innovation and Clean Growth. And to all the attendees today, my name is John Adams. I'm the Managing Director of the Natural Gas Innovation Fund, sometimes or often known as NGIF. So the Natural Gas Innovation Fund was created back in 2016 by the Canadian Gas Association to support the funding of clean tech innovation, specifically directed at natural gas. NGIF's investors include 12 Canadian energy corporates across Canada, across the value chain, all leaders in the responsible energy and clean technology advancement. Earlier today, you would have heard Tim Egan, President and CEO of CGA, and Mike Rose, President and CEO of Tourmaline Oil, and an investor in NGIF speak on NGIF and its role in innovation to power Canada's and BC's economic recovery. NGIF fills a technology development gap in the sector. We invest in innovation, primarily led by clean tech startups who have solutions or enabling solutions to the production, pipeline transmission, and end-use distribution of natural gas. Our model is really taking startups from their idea, so from a concept, and bringing them all the way to commercialization into the gas sector. And in doing so, we lower the CO2 emission intensity and the methane emission intensity of natural gas to really an ever cleaner methane molecule. Next slide. So next slide after that. So you can see we're quite active in BC. We have 9 really key investment stakeholders that are driving the performance of the BC sector. 2 gas utilities, investment partners, including Fortis BC and Pacific Northern Gas, with their natural gas transmission and distribution systems for their residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation customer service territories. I also note that we have 3 other gas utilities in NGIF, ATCO Gas, Enbridge Gas, and also Sask Energy. We have 5 upstream producer investment partners with the responsible development and production of natural gas in BC, including Birchcliff, Chevron, Petronas Energy, Shell Canada, and Tourmaline Oil. So I also note we have 2 other investors in NGIF, including Perpetual Natural Energy and Canadian Natural Resources Limited. Also, 2 trusted partners to co-invest in our projects with emissions reductions, including the BC Clean Energy Ice Fund, and through our channel, our panel chair, Gavin, and his organization, Geoscience BC. Next slide. We've done a tremendous amount of investment in BC for gas. 10 approved projects that are de-risking solutions for clean technologies. We have 3.3 million investment from NGIF's investors through our capital pooling from those investors, and we have 34 million invested in total eligible projects supporting emissions reduction and clean tech patent development and job creation for BC. Next slide. We have a portfolio of companies, 5 clean tech startups here, where they're working on the majority of our work at NGIF, which is really emission reduction in existing natural gas production, transmission, and distribution, storage, or end-use applications. These include de-risking clean tech in natural gas heat pumps, micro combined heat and power units, micro LNG, LNG marine, CO2 reduction, carbon capture, utilization, storage. The list goes on, and a lot of work around methane emissions detection, quantification, and reduction. On the next slide, we have also got some of our work is in the production of renewable natural gas and hydrogen, and so we are de-risking technologies here to green our natural gas pipeline. Next slide. And next slide again. So I would say in closing, these BC startups are all part of our overall commitment from NGIF, our industry investors, and our government partners to support BC's gas industry with low emission, reliable, affordable, and safe energy, and a continued ever cleaner methane molecule. Thank you to the organizers of BC Geoscience, BC Natural Gas Forum, and to Geoscience BC for the invitation to speak on this panel. And thank you very much, Gavin.
Thank you, John. Excellent comments, especially around de-risking technology. And so I think we're going to dive into that a little bit further here momentarily. But also I wanted to recognize the tremendous diversity of those investments and the startup component, the entrepreneurial aspect of the work that you're doing in the natural gas sector. So with that, let's turn to our 4th panelist, where I know that mineral development and reducing emissions can go hand in hand, and they can work together, which brings me to Martin Turenne then of FPX Nickel to share his example on how mining innovation and clean growth is advancing in the province. So over to you, Martin.
Great. Thanks, Gavin, and greetings to all the attendees, and thank you to the forum for providing me the opportunity to speak. I guess as the representative of the mining industry on this session panel, I'd start off with a perhaps grandiose premise that mining can save the world. And what I mean by that is that of all the factors that will help guide the planet to a sustainable, low-carbon future, and that will allow British Columbia and Canada to meet our international commitments to minimizing climate change, among all those factors that will determine our success or failure in that regard, the mining of critical industrial minerals like copper and nickel is absolutely fundamental. Without a steady supply of those metals for clean electricity transmission, for battery storage, the planet may simply not stand a chance. This obviously entails a pretty radical shift in how the mining industry is portrayed and perceived in our society. I think it's a portrayal that we can boil down to the following. When it comes to environmental protection, to the protection of the natural world, mining is not the problem. It's actually part of the solution. So by way of background, I'm the CEO of FPX Nickel Corp, which is a small Vancouver-based company developing one of the world's largest nickel deposits at our Descartes district in north central BC, northwest of Fort St. James. BC hasn't traditionally been known as a nickel producer, but based on the very large nickel resource we've outlined at Descartes, we believe the project could become ultimately BC's answer to Sudbury and be sort of a powerhouse of nickel production at world leading rates for potentially for multiple generations. On the theme of innovation, this has always been an area of particular focus for FPX in advancing this project. It starts with the fact that the nickel at our project is hosted in a rather unique metallic form that lends itself to recovery using magnetic separators, and so that there's no chemical reagents required in the main recovery of nickel here. This lends itself to generating tailings that are much more benign than tailings at typical nickel operations in the world. And in fact, the tailings from our deposit are acid consuming rather than acid generating, which is another key advantage or differentiator versus other different types of nickel deposits globally. I'd say the technological advance that we're probably most excited about at the moment is the work we've done with a team of researchers led by Dr. Greg Dipple at the University of British Columbia to demonstrate that the tailings from our operation could sequester significant amounts of carbon dioxide and basically act as a sizable carbon sink that could make the operation carbon neutral from an emission standpoint. This process of carbon sequestration comes about as a result of the high content in our deposit of a mineral called brucite, which, so when brucite is contained in host rock that has undergone mineral processing, that brucite, when it's deposed in tailings, becomes exposed to air. And when exposed to air, it actually seeks out carbon dioxide naturally from atmosphere and locks that CO2 away in mineral form in perpetuity. This is a phenomenon that we see here at our deposit in north central BC, and it's also a phenomenon that can be observed at other nickel deposits and other diamond deposits globally. So the research being done, supported by FPX in part at the University of British Columbia, is world leading in this regard in identifying this as an opportunity. We also see the ability to kind of to collaborate with other industry partners who may provide more concentrated sources of CO2, and particularly here think of the natural gas industry. And so point sources of CO2 are those that can actually accelerate this chemical reaction and accelerate the amount of carbon sequestration occurring at our project. And so this concept of producing nickel, a critical mineral, and in doing so in such a way that would have a very low environmental footprint and could in fact be carbon neutral, represents, very much a realizable dream here. And it's this type of innovation really that, in my view, can make even the staunchest environmentalist sit up and take notice that again, to my earlier point, mining as it relates to a low carbon future is not the problem, it's actually the solution. Thanks, Gavin.
Excellent, Martin. Thank you very much. Really impressive to hear a bit more about how we as a province are going to achieve net zero emissions. So that's a very practical example. And also interesting to know that we may be adding another base metal to the production of mined products here in British Columbia on top of the copper and the zinc and all the other important metals. So with that, I wish to open up the discussion to hear from the audience and just remind you to use the Wova app and drop your question in there. And if it's specific to the panelists, that's fantastic. Or if it's a broader question, then we can address it to everyone on the panel. And so while those questions are coming in, I see there's a few there right now. I'll just take the opportunity to go back to something I heard each panelist refer to, and that's essentially the importance of collaboration and leveraging resources and building partnerships. So if I can go back to Sue, just at the Digital Technology Supercluster, can you elaborate a bit more on how that collaboration is improving your efforts?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin, and thanks for raising that question, because it's critical, I think, for not just our natural resources sector, but but for the Canadian economy overall. And it's the foundation of what we do in the Supercluster. And so let me just unpack for a moment what we mean by collaborative innovation, because I think it does mean different things to different people. So I mentioned in my opening that we are out to solve some of industry's and society's biggest problems. So what does that look like when you say collaborative innovation? What it means is we bring organizations together who wouldn't normally sit at a table together. Some of that is done voluntarily, but some of that we require. So any project that we will consider must have a minimum of 3 companies. One of those companies must be an SME. Why? Because Canada has not a very good track record and a huge opportunity to scale our SMEs across all sectors, in technology sectors, but also natural resources as well. So we must have an SME, and we must have a post-secondary or academic institution involved in the project team. Why? Because bridging the gap between academic research and commercialization of that research for the benefit of industry and our economies is something that we have failed at, and as a country. And we believe having those people at the table will help drive better results. So that's what I mean by collaborative innovation, is that you all sit at the table together to develop a solution. I said earlier that doing this, our early experience in the 2.5 years we've been around, is that it's a hard exercise to do, but you get a better solution than any individual organization could come up with on its own. And I can unpack that a little bit more for you in a moment. One of the other things that's critical for the natural resources sector and again the broader Canadian economy is that we pay attention to IP. We have a habit in some ways of trading jobs for IP. In other words, we report and we focus on job creation. That's critical. But we seem to think that it's either or, that if we have IP and we can license or sell Canadian-made IP in return for some short-term jobs, that's a good recipe for the future. It's not. And so in our collaborative innovation model, we focus very heavily on IP at every stage of the process. That means coming in, background IP that small companies bring is owned, and that ownership is retained by them. Foreground IP, some of which you can't even identify at the front end of a project, will be governed by the FRAND principles, fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory discussions. And we make sure that we keep IP in Canada. That's really critical. And so back to how do we wrap all of this together? When you get organizations that look at a problem differently, they're going to come up with different solutions. The challenge is most of us in industry are used to and accustomed to giving the answer that we think is the right one, and then we're just going to drive with that. And so it's hard. It's hard to listen to someone who has a different perspective than you do. It's hard to think of a solution different from the one that you've already mapped out. Our experience is that those organizations who are prepared to listen to different perspectives will develop solutions that benefit their organization, their sector, far better than if they sat in a room with the door closed and the window coverings drawn. And I'll just give you one example. I'm not sure if Pilar has joined us, but in the event that she's not able to join us, I'm going to give you one example of a project that has advanced rapidly in this context of collaborative innovation. We call it Freshwater Data Commons. We all know how big the freshwater body ecosystem is across Canada. It's massive. What might be surprising is we don't have any means across the country or even in regions for measuring and protecting the health of those fresh bodies of water. And so our Freshwater Data Commons project, in which Pilar's company is very involved, Tech Resources is the lead, is creating a data platform starting with a focus in the Columbia River Basin so that we can develop a platform to measure, assess, monitor, and protect the health of freshwater bodies across the country, whether you're going to do a housing development in a community or whether you want to use it for forest development or mining. And that will accelerate our ability to leverage while at the same time protecting the environment. And it'll really put Canada on the front page, if you will, in terms of marrying those commitments. And the project that Pilar's involved with is a demonstration of how it can work. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sue. And we may, yes, have lost Pilar momentarily, but we hope she's able to rejoin us. So thank you for covering a bit of that off on her behalf, Sue. It's clear that breaking new ideas is critical. We don't always know where they're going to come from. And so having those new ideas shared and discussed thoroughly is critical to accelerating innovation and solutions. So with that, maybe I can turn to John to elaborate with the Natural Gas Innovation Fund. How do you see collaboration as being important to your efforts?
Sure. Thanks, Gavin. So very much so, I believe what NGIF is doing is essentially innovating in itself with respect to one particular sector. So we have, as I mentioned, 12 energy corporates in natural gas that have come together to collaborate on innovation. So I think that's the first piece that we've never seen in Canada in a specific sector until now. So second, we've got a tremendous amount of talent around that table, and so when we have a competition, say for energy startups that come through our pipeline, we get all of the directors of technology and innovation at each of our energy corporates, and our team, together with their team, go through those intake, and from a peer review process, analyze each one of those for the opportunity to have a meaningful impact in the natural gas sector. And so that process of not one, not two, but 12 parties and the experience in their respective organizations all come forward and look at an opportunity together, well, it becomes pretty quickly evident which are the ones that may not be the right fit, and then which are the ones that can drive a home run. And so that 50 quickly comes down to about, say, 10. Then in our stage 2, that same industry peer review goes through, and we do a deeper dive on all aspects of the opportunity: the clean tech management team, the innovation to be de-risked, the market opportunity uptake, of course, which we know for the gas sector, the business rollout plan, the emissions reduction opportunity, and we holistically evaluate that opportunity and from a very deep dive. And we all go out, not just one, but all of those corporates and the directors of their innovation. We go out to the site, and we look to the site and the startup, and really kind of poke holes and see what if this is going to work. Then we make a recommendation, get it down to, say, 8 companies. Now that's funded. We've provided about, say, 10 or 15% grant to that clean tech startup. Then we go to our government partners, such as yourself, Gavin, or to the federal partners who have envelopes of money for clean technology and emission reduction. We take our due diligence in hand, and we say, we've just evaluated from an industry perspective, and we've just approved funding from that perspective to these 8 companies. But they need, of course, federal and provincial funding, and so they leverage our due diligence. And so we've essentially accelerated that clean technology company. We've reduced the paperwork for them having to go to other agencies, and now they are essentially getting to market faster and further than what they would have if they had to do everything kind of all by itself. So Gavin, I really do feel passionate about the work we do at NGIF and the way that we are, accelerating these technologies to market. And because in NGIF, the investor is the customer, we are essentially creating a full customer validation and creation for that startup once they've been through our process and validated through demonstration. So I'll stop there and over to you.
Excellent. Well, thanks, John. It seems clear to me that whole process that you just outlined, that in itself is innovative and a model for others to look to. So excellent work and progress on that regard. We do have Pilar back, so that's fantastic. And I'm not sure if you want to further elaborate, Pilar, perhaps on the power of collaboration as you see it at the work at Astra Earth. Not sure she can hear me, so I'll move the question then to Martin.
Absolutely, it has, and thanks, and sorry all for the delays there. It happened to be that. Can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, we can hear you, Pilar.
Okay, good. It happens that here are exactly some of the questions that are being posted in the chat there. You know, like I normally have excellent connection, and this Huva is asking me to actually use my data because it doesn't like Wi-Fi and it doesn't like all these other things, and I'm in rural Canada, right? So, but this is an unusual thing to happen. I certainly see collaboration as definitely part of those things that we cannot achieve great goals if we don't do it together. There's just no way. We're all too small. Even the largest companies are. We collaborate, for example, in the freshwater data commons with Microsoft, which obviously is one of the largest in the world, and still they work with the smaller SMEs and projects like the Supercluster because they know that this is a way that you can reach that. We work together with, academia and others because we cannot do the R&D as commercially viable companies. You need to be able to do other things and not focus on that. So until you get together in these sort of consortia where there's R&D separated from what you need, then they can advance on the R&D while we're doing the commercial products. And so I think that there's all of those things that make it very robust, the concept of collaboration.
Excellent. Very good points, Pilar, essentially about the efficiencies that we can gain by collaborating and make a more effective product and technology. So with that, maybe let's move to Martin then on how you see the power of collaboration with respect to your project and the technology related to carbon sequestration.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it really, from our standpoint, has been based on collaborations between industry, meaning companies like ourselves and others who see the opportunity with their mineral deposits or with their mines to sequester carbon dioxide and understand the advantages of that, the importance of being not just low cost producers but low on the carbon curve as well. And it really is the innovators, though, that we need to collaborate on this, and that has tended to be, of course, the researchers from the University of British Columbia, Trent University, again under the leadership of Greg Dippel at UBC, and that has resulted in a collaboration that has then yielded funding from provincial sources, from federal sources, to advance this work as it pertains to the study of carbon sequestration in Canadian mineral deposits. For proponents or for companies like ourselves, who traditionally look to capital markets to fund our work, capital markets are very focused on, for the time being, they tend to be more focused on traditional development drivers for mineral exploration development projects. That means accessing capital to fund drilling, to fund engineering studies, to fund environmental assessments and feasibility studies. The capital markets perhaps aren't as willing to fund work that is fundamentally research around developing ways, for example, in our case, of sequestering large amounts of carbon dioxide. I think we may be moving to a point in the capital markets where the value of this type of work is well understood, and investors are willing to put money to work to advance projects along their environmental aims. But by and large, there's more of a high focus on traditional project development when it comes to capital market support. So therefore, it really falls to government, both provincially and federally, to fund work that secures, in the case of the concepts we're discussing here, Canada's preeminence as a producer of low carbon metals for that energy transition.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. Your comments made me think about just the applicability of the rocks on your site to sequester carbon, and how that may not only benefit a mining operation one day, but could that also benefit other resource sectors or other industries in British Columbia?
Yeah, it could very much so. There's, as I alluded to in my comments, the rate of sequestration of carbon in mine tailings is sort of rate limited by the delivery of CO2 to those tailings, to the surface area of those tailings. So one manner of delivering CO2 to the surface area of the tailings is obviously to expose the tailings to atmosphere, just to air. The other more accelerated manner of encouraging that reaction between the tailings and the carbon dioxide is to have point sources of CO2. So in the case of our project, we're quite close to the proposed Prince Rupert natural gas transmission line. And so if there's if there ever were to be an opportunity there to have a point source of flue gas, for example, from a pumping station associated with that transmission line, you could see, huge acceleration in the amount of sequestration and tailings that are at our project. So that's just one example of how there's interaction there with the natural gas industry.
Excellent. Very good. Thanks, Martin. Maybe I could just turn back to Sue, just in terms of the question I see here on WUVA is really about the stability of a digital infrastructure and our future going digital. Could you maybe comment on about the safety and security of a digital network?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I saw that one, and we do hear about that. So let me make a couple of comments on that. The world's not waiting for us. The world is digital already, and we need to make sure that we too are digital. And working together with government, the provincial government, I think, is very vested and very involved now in building strong, reliable digital infrastructure. The federal government's been involved in it for quite some time, getting collaboration between both levels of government and bringing in industry so that the kind of infrastructure that we're building, whether it's 5G or whether it's something else, is going to work for industry, citizens, government, and the economy. Again, back to collaboration. I think we are light years ahead of where we used to be even 2 years ago in terms of the reliability, privacy protections, the safety of digital infrastructure. And I think we have seen in the fall economic statement from the Government of Canada, we've certainly heard our provincial leaders speak about the importance of digital infrastructure, whether you talk about broadband access across the province or whether you talk about more discrete sections of digital infrastructure. It's something that is here now. It's something that will be better if we get industry involved in the conversation in partnership with with governments and with not-for-profits, for that matter. The biggest risk that we have in Canada right now in terms of advancing many industries is speed. And sacrificing speed for process is going to undermine our economy. Recognizing that we have an opportunity and we've got to work together and do it quickly will bring the best results and will put us on the global stage. We don't have an option here, but we'll do it better if we do it together.
Excellent. Thank you, Sue. Fully agree with that. Switching now a little bit back to a carbon intensity question. I see a question here posed to John, and it's really about the the benefit of replacing more carbon intensive fuels in the short term. But how do we see that playing out in the long term? And I just remind the audience as well, we did hear from Federal Minister O'Regan just the other day about leaving no one behind. And so I'm curious to your thoughts as to replacement of more carbon intensive fuels and energy.
Sure. So I'm not sure if I would use the word replacement. Maybe augmenting would certainly be one. I would say, we're doing several things at once to best lower the emissions for the sector. And so, for example, we are looking at, and I'll use BC as an example. We have, and you have the Montney as one of your most valuable assets. And I would say, from a lowering emissions perspective, we have companies that can, for example, go to a production site and all in tandem bring a coordinated approach of different solutions to lower the emissions. And I would say a bulk of our work within NGIF is really around natural gas and lowering the emission profile around it through various areas. And so, we have in BC alone, we have Saltworks, and they've got a water management system at a production site that lowers the GHG emissions by hauling trucks off the road. And then we have Kinetics, which has got shape memory, alloy-based valve actuators for zero bleed valves at the production site. We have GHG Sat that's got a satellite aircraft hybrid system in the air overlooking the Montney to detect GHG emissions. So I think it's never one. I think it's a coordinated set of many solutions that tackle a problem from a different perspective. And so this is what's going to make natural gas. I don't even like the word transitional. I think natural gas is a foundational fuel for Canada. It's one of Canada's largest economic sectors, and so I think there's a real drive towards emissions there. But I would say augmenting the sector, sure, we have some technologies in our portfolio that are renewable natural gas. For those, we take gas off of various feedstock sources, anaerobic digesters, cow manure, wastewater treatment plants, waste woody biomass, and then through various processes we can convert it into gas, scrub it out, and then feed it into a gas pipeline. So a way to sort of lower the carbon content of a gas pipeline. We're also, of course, hydrogen is the big sort of word of the day, and everybody's interested. And sure, we have some technologies in our portfolio, and I think we're keeping an eye on it. I would say so from the emissions reduction from actually lowering the profile on natural gas and then augmented with some solutions on renewables with respect to RNG and hydrogen. That's our approach. There's no one solution. There's many, and we want to keep diversifying our portfolios so that the intensity of the methane is down and CO2 emissions is down. And I think that's the approach we want to take to drive both BC's and Canada's sector. So I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but that's my thinking there.
Thank you, John. No, I think that's excellent. And it really just drives home the point of we need multiple solutions and many different ideas all coming together in order to achieve really a truly net zero future of 2050, and also to achieve the targets set out by Clean BC. I recognize the time is winding down here, so maybe what we can do now is turn to closing remarks. I'll start perhaps then with Pilar, because I know we lost you there for a little bit, so why don't we move back to you now, and you have about a minute and a half or so for closing remarks.
Thanks, Gavin. And I think that there's many points in here, including some of the questions that are hoisting there of the data and how we all connect. Obviously, in some areas here in rural Canada where I am, while the certain organizations have been able to throw in fiber as a backbone, getting it from there to the houses or to the businesses has been a whole other conversation. But some communities have organized beautifully and they have been able to get it through. In some others, that's almost an impossible task. And so it's going to have to be probably a satellite-based data connectivity. Things as the wariness of people about data protection and data security and things like that, they are always going to be there. We have to continue to improve in what we do and how we do it. And data is the one thing that we also need in order to be able to solve things. So without it, we will not be able to derive at the right information that we need to bring it through. All of the projects that are being mentioned here and many others need to connect too, because tackling them in silos is not going to solve the overarching issues of net zero and climate change. And in my world, water is kind of the key connector to most of everything in there. And that's the reason why we look at that, because if we look at hydrogen, which I think it's a fantastic possibility, we do have to look then at the water tables and how it affects, and what is really green, what is really blue, and how does that move forward. And it needs to be integrated into what we're doing. So there's a variety of great things that are out there that, with the support of the Supercluster, we're creating the data commons that are actually bringing them together and avoiding that kind of siloed structure. And I think that is the power of collaboration, and that is the power of how we're going to be able to do it and bring this incredible Canada product that can be then moved over to the world. And I think that we should lead that, and we shouldn't be behind on that. And we are capable, and from BC, absolutely we are.
Excellent. Thank you, Pilar. And you did touch on the importance of water and as a precious resource. And so perhaps there's another panel, another day just focused on water. So let's move to Martin then for closing remarks, please.
Thanks, Gavin. And thanks to all the co-panelists here. When I think about the opportunity that BC, specifically in Canada, has to be a powerhouse in the supply of responsibly sourced, low carbon metals to the green energy future, to the energy transition. It's tremendously exciting. It's one of those things that makes you want to grab people by the shoulders and kind of say, do you realize this is the dream, really, where we can support industry, we can create jobs, we can work collaboratively into the benefit of First Nations and local community groups. And we can also help to achieve the targets that we've set for ourselves to contribute to reducing carbon emissions and to preserving the planet as best we can. And so, just very excited to kind of communicate that to all potential collaborators out there, to representatives in government and in industry, and to society in general, frankly, that this opportunity we have as a province and as a country to lead in this regard is really a once in a century type of opportunity.
Very good. Thanks, Martin. And the leadership aspect is crucial. And I'd offer the province is leading within Canada in a lot of these areas. So thank you, Martin. Not that much time left, so I'll go to John now, please, for closing remarks.
Sure. Thank you. I'll be brief. So BC's future and innovation, clean growth of natural gas. I look at innovation in really three ways. We need to continuously improve what we're doing, and sort of constantly go from business as usual to growth. We need to go a step further in innovation and look at 2.0 versions of our products and services so that we can kind of keep up with the changing market, because the market is always changing. And so 2.0 versions is my sort of second thinking there. And then my third thinking on innovation is really disruptive. We need to be looking at transforming entire markets and industries, and look at technologies and innovation that can pose that kind of growth. And we need to lead the way in Canada and BC by creating sometimes entirely new business models. So just got to be open to all those things. I'll stop there so that others can have a chance to speak. Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks, John. And over to Sue for final comments. We have a few seconds left, Sue.
I've 5 seconds, so I'll keep it short. I agree with everything that's just been said. 3 quick comments, starting with innovation's not an option. Digital and data transformation is the present. And with that as a frame, 3 points. Governments are our partners. They're partners with industry. We've got leadership in our premier and in Ravi Kahlon provincially. We've got a new Minister of Industry in Ottawa with François-Philippe Champagne and Jonathan Wilkinson. These are our partners. We can work together with them better than if we work in separate silos. Canada has an opportunity to lead the world. We do. The globe is going to want the products of our forest industry. They're going to want the products of our mining industry, and they're going to want our energy resources, and they're going to want them produced in a carbon neutral way, in a way that's respectful of the environment, and a way that's competitive. And you look at some of the work that leaders like Teck Resources, Mosaic, Canfor are doing on these fronts, and you can see what can be done. And my last comment, we haven't talked about it much, but we have the best talent in the world when it comes to digital, when it comes to technology, when it comes to natural resources. Blend these together with collaborative innovation with our government and academic partners, and we have a very bright future. But we've got to get on with it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sue. Fully agree. Yeah, the skill set of the panelists today, yourself included, are fantastic, not to mention all the panelists we've heard from through this whole forum. So thank you to all the panelists again for your comments and insights. It's been very good, very fantastic opportunities going forward. And I wish to also thank the audience for participating and for listening, and to the organizers, especially Sue Weber and the C3 team. Thank you very much, and stay safe, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin and panel. We are pleased to make a donation to the Outland Youth Employment Program, or OYEP, on behalf of all of our speakers today. They are a national network of land-based education, training, and work opportunities for high school-aged Indigenous youth. OYEP is a 6-week work experience providing training and education in a supportive space that replicates work environments. To learn more about the initiative, please visit their virtual exhibitor booth. We're now moving into our next networking break, sponsored by EcoFish Research. We invite you to continue the conversation with participating speakers in the post-panel breakout rooms, as well as meet up and touch base with other forum delegates through the Attendees and Communities tabs on the homepage. The post-panel breakout rooms can be accessed by visiting the sub-session connected to the panel in your agenda. And don't forget to check out our virtual exhibitors. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning, and we would like to see you back on a little bit earlier online today at 1:30 for a keynote address from the Honourable Jonathan Wilkinson, Canada's Minister of Environment and Climate Change.